In this episode, I'm speaking with Dr. Eva Yacobi. She shares how she uses naturopathic medicine and her understanding of trauma healing in her new program, Hormonal Alchemy. We also dive into the emotional connection to food and how your dietary choices, the impact of authentic self expression, and gut health impact your mental well being, and how sex is a gateway to healthy intimacy and connection. This conversation is for anyone who is struggling with a healthy relationship to their authentic self. What you're going to learn is how struggles and challenges can be the source of purpose and fulfillment, how your dietary choices have a direct impact on your mental health, and why men should seek knowledge about women from women themselves. This is so important because Dr. Yacobi and I open the doors on topics that many find taboo and are often the root cause of our personal suffering. All right, doctor. What is going on, my friend? How in the hell are you?
I'm good. I was thinking about it because I lost your video, but
Mm-hmm.
last time we spoke, I was living in Tulum,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a long time ago. It was maybe 2 years ago, at least a year and a half ago.
Has it been that long? At
Um,
least a year and a half, probably.
yeah, because I've been in Bali just over a year now, and we spoke well before I left Tulum.
All right. So I get to hear
Yeah.
about all the things. I'm excited.
All-
So
yeah,
before we
and
get, yeah,
I
talk me.
Mhm. I lost your video, by the
Go
way.
ahead. What were you saying?
I don't see you. I don't see
Okay.
you.
So this
I
is one of those
lost.
moments where it's recording mine.
Okay, got it.
Um,
So just keep
it's back.
talking. No, not
Yeah.
yet, but I'm
So
assuming.
this is one of those weird moments. So if this is ever happening,
Okay.
it's recording both of ours
Oh,
separately, exactly as it looks to you, like in a good way.
okay. Okay, cool.
So
Perfect.
I'll just mark this as
Okay, now I see you.
perfect. So, anywho, so catch me up. So you're now in Bali. You've been there for a year. What? I mean, I could fill in some blanks,
Mm-hmm.
knowing what I know. But talk to me about what got you to Bali. You left Tulum. You're there for a year. Now you're just
Right.
sitting there cheesing because there's a story behind it, and I got to know it.
Yes. Well, my intention was to always be back in Bali. I mean, when we met, I was in Miami, and that was never
Mm-hmm.
part of the plan. Like my plan was always to be back in Bali, and but because of COVID, I got stuck outside of Bali for 3 years. I left Bali. I was living here. I
Mm.
left just before COVID hit because I had to go take my medical boards in California, and then I couldn't get back.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we met, I was in Miami, and then I left, went to Tulum, and it was just a matter of finding there was a little bit of courage because I wasn't sure how it was going to work with living in Bali, but working on US time zone. And I also had just built a
Oh
big
yeah.
life in Tulum, and it was hard for me to kind of step out of it um,
Mm-hmm.
until I kind of burnt out in Tulum. And I said, I have to go. It's time to go back to Bali.
It's time.
um, it's time. And so I left Tulum the end of November 2022, went back to the States for a little bit, and by December 15th, I arrived back here, 22, December
I
15th,
love it. So
2022.
you just brought up something I think is very interesting, especially for anyone that may have the desire to take off and go live somewhere else for a while, and what that might mean for them, with their work and all the schedules. That's one of those things I don't think people recognize until they do it.
Yeah.
So I would be very curious to know, like you said, it took a little courage to move yourself to a completely different time zone, and you already had this business. Like, how have you navigated that since? How have you made that work?
So I realized when I got here, I kind of split my day. I've got my morning, right? So it's
Mm-hmm.
evening East Coast, like early evening on the West Coast, later evening on the East Coast, and then for my morning now, right? It's 8 a.m. here. And so I'll
Mm.
work morning and I'll work evening. Um, and then I've had some clients in Europe, and then that goes more at like 4 or 5 o'clock. But otherwise, it's kind of 7, 8 a.m. until like 10, 11 a.m., 12 a.m., 12 p.m., and then 7 p.m., 8 p.m., 9 p.m., 10 p.m. on the other,
Oh, wow. So you'll work well into the evening if need be.
if need be. Yeah. Yeah.
Got it. All right. But it's
Yeah.
doable.
It's doable. And I know there's people here that will work all through the night. And I'm like, no, I won't do that. Like, for my own health, my own sake, I'm not going to be working, at 2 a.m. But
Right,
I know
right,
people,
right.
I know people do it, but that's what I was able to find for myself. Work in the morning, work in the evening. And then my day is, I work on my marketing, or I'll go to the gym, or I'll do other things, right, during the day.
Right. I
Yeah.
love that. So talk to me. I read in the notes that you put that you are, I'm assuming it's launched or you're getting ready to launch a brand new program.
Yeah. So it's called Hormonal Alchemy, and this has been it's interesting talking to you because you were like kind of at the very beginning of my launching of programs, and this is like what I've been wanting to do for years, and
Mm.
finally am arriving at. And where it's the combination of naturopathic medicine and really deep coaching.
Mm-hmm.
I spent the last
Mm.
year in a certification in sex, love, and relationships, all based on
Mm-hmm.
Tantra and Taoism
I
and
thought that was our
neuroscience.
20s. Isn't that when we got certified and all those things?
So funny. And, trauma informed work and all of these
Yeah.
elements. And so, I can now get to the deeper layers with my clients
Mm.
because for me, I love naturopathic medicine, but what I know I've always
Mm-hmm.
been really after is like deep transformation. So not only are
Mm-hmm.
you feeling better physically, like your life is changing, who you are in the world is someone more of who you are, who you were put here to be. And so I created this program called Hormonal Alchemy, which is a combination of the two, where
Mm.
it's a 4-month program. 8 weeks of it is really naturopathic medicine. We're going through your labs, we're going through your diet, we're going through your stressors, if you're on medication, what's going on with that, what's going on with supplementation, stuff like that. But then we're
Mm-hmm.
doing more of the inner work, where it's like your inner child work, your shadow work,
Mm-hmm.
which I know you're deeply connected to. Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, but based on the methodologies of Tantra and Taoism, and really it's a desire-based coaching versus problem-based coaching. And like, what is it that
Oh,
you
wow.
really, yeah, what are you really desiring? And then what is that bringing up in the body? And it's very somatic in nature.
Oh, I absolutely love this.
Yeah.
Um, so there's two questions I have that are kind of different, but I'm going to start with what came up first. So you made reference to the journey that you've been on to get to this point with a program that I think you said it, is what you've wanted to do for so long.
Yes.
So in your words, and I can relate to this, like I'm literally in the same boat, like the intersection of the work that I'm the program
That's
that
all
I
right.
just launched, which this podcast is, yeah, this podcast is an extension of this new thing that I'm doing. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like it's the intersection between the deep work. And in my case, it's the deep work and entrepreneurship.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
it finally feels like the thing I've always wanted to do. And it just
yeah.
took like years
Years.
for it to click, for whatever reason. I don't think it took longer than it needed to. I think whatever was needed has
Yeah.
now come to pass and we can bring these things to fruition. So I would
Mhm.
love to hear what your journey
Mm.
kind of has been like as you look back from the 2, 3, 4 years ago, whatever it was when we first met, and you were really starting to step into I think at the time, like you were just stepping into the idea of creating a program
Yeah.
such as these, and now you've been doing it. So what's that been from then till now?
Yeah. Well, it hasn't been easy, I'll tell you that much.
And everyone's bubble just bursted.
Right, it still isn't really, but
You're like, didn't we mention shadow work already?
yeah. But I'm just curious. Can you hear the drilling in the background? Because I can close my door.
I can, but it's fine. You're in Bali. Just say it's like a weird animal.
Yeah, it is a weird because I got some noises coming out
It,
from that side, noises coming out from that side. Okay.
yeah,
Um,
it's just a jungle creature. And no, and by the way, this cancels background noise, so it
okay.
shouldn't
Okay.
be an issue on when other people are listening to this.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, it really starts way earlier, right? When I was
Mm-hmm.
25 is when I first got into personal development, and coaching and in that realm is what I really wanted to do, but I didn't have the confidence. And it's been a major journey, right? Where it was,
Mm-hmm.
you know, personal development, strictly mental, strictly head up.
Mm.
Nothing in the body, but it got me to leave the US. It got me to travel the world. It helped me go to medical school,
Mm-hmm.
get through medical school, all those things. But it was not until I stepped more into the somatic pieces while I was in medical school that I didn't even realize. I went to Tony Robbins, right? I did UPW, I did Date with
Mm-hmm.
Destiny, and then all of a sudden I'm like feeling my body and I'm like freaking out.
Right.
Right. And but it's this work, all of this personal development work, this deeper work that has really what supported me
Mm-hmm.
getting me to where I am. The medicine is
Mm.
I love medicine. I wanted to be a doctor, in undergrad. My intention was to go become a doctor, go to conventional medical school, but when I was literally had interviews, I then canceled them and said, I'm not doing this for many
Mm.
reasons. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, part of it was fear. Part of it is I was like, the
Mm-hmm.
system really doesn't land with me. Like, I'm not going to go. I knew I was going to get destroyed in conventional medical school, mine being soul, and I wasn't willing to do
Mm.
that. And um, so if I fast forward, it's like finally the intersection, like you said, of naturopathic medicine with now this deeper somatic work that I've been doing, that I've been with the personal development, all the mindset work that I've done over since I was 25. It's like 18 years. I don't know if I'm doing the math right, but
Mm-hmm.
it's a long, right?
At a certain point, we
Whatever,
stopped doing the math, so it's fine.
like whatever. And so it's finally
Mm-hmm.
bringing the two worlds together, and it's been a long journey because of
Mm.
my own personal journey, and then figuring out how to bring the two worlds together.
Yeah, it's. I had the same experience in pursuing psychology that you
Mm-hmm.
referenced in pursuing Western medicine.
Yeah.
I was pursuing my marriage and family therapy license, and I didn't go back to school until I was late 20s, nearing 30. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it was, there's like two very specific reasons. Um, like you, that it wasn't that the experience I was having was wrong, or I I didn't necessarily think what they were doing was correct or appropriate, but rather it was more of this intuitive, like undeniable, like hard stop, like voice in my body saying, like, this isn't, it's not that it's wrong, but this isn't your path. And, but with that, choosing to not complete the schooling and become a licensed therapist, I, like you and I have talked, quite a bit. I struggled for years in self doubt and who am I? Am I smart enough? Am I good enough? Will I ever be, credible or worthy of respect from those that have, the degrees and the licenses and all these things that, I was so deeply insecure about not having.
Yep.
And it's taken me many years and many different healing journeys, different modalities, combinations of modalities, and then just quite frankly getting my ass whooped
Yeah.
in the streets of this thing we call life and work and relationship and family and experiencing grief and all these kind of things that finally I was like, fuck it. Like, I know enough to be a valuable piece to this conversation.
Yeah.
And I started slowly but surely, like you, leaning into courage and becoming a little bit more apologetic and or unapologetic rather,
Yeah.
uh, to just start having a conversation
Yeah.
and being okay when someone's like, I don't agree. Instead of taking that like, oh shit, that means I'm wrong, I'm stupid, I shouldn't be having this conversation. Instead, it becomes like, interesting, help me understand your perspective, or talk to me about why that doesn't land with you. I'm curious.
Yeah.
Um, so
Yeah.
but with that, the other thing, you saying that uh, this is what you've always wanted to be doing,
Mhm.
right? So talk to me a little bit about the always like this. It sounds like there was a deeper knowing, probably long before you had the language to, to explain it or articulate it. But what was this thing that you always knew, if you could put it into words, that you wanted to be doing that took you so long to connect the dots?
I think part of it is, you mentioned credibility. Like there's been this coming from
Mm.
where I come from, it's like needing to be credible, feeling credible, and um, just belief in myself. I want to close the door because now it's driving me crazy. So give me one
Do
second.
it.
It got louder.
You're good.
Okay. So part of it is, I come from a highly academic family. I
Mm-hmm.
and there was the need for me to feel credible. That was real, and
Mm-hmm.
I own it. At this point, I'm like, there's a reality that I needed to go, or part of the reason I chose to go to medical school is I did need to feel credible, and I didn't have the
Mm-hmm.
confidence in myself. But what
Mm-hmm.
I was really also kind of obsessed with, because it saved me. Like I got sick at 16. I can't say medicine really healed me.
Mm-hmm.
And and so it was these deeper pieces without wanting to go and becoming a psychologist or becoming a therapist
Mm-hmm.
or any of that. It was this coaching piece, but I never had felt like I had the tools, or I had the really the I wouldn't be taken seriously. I wouldn't It didn't feel credible enough for me. And
Mm-hmm.
so in that, it was like, okay, I'm going to continue to pursue medicine once I found naturopathic medicine, which was a
Mm-hmm.
10-year gap from when I walked to finish medical undergrad. Has spent 10 years, found naturopathic medicine. And then at
Oh,
31, yeah, 31, I went to medical school. And
wow.
so, yeah. Um, so but it's always been this deeper work that I've been obsessed with. Like I've been,
Mm.
and this is part of what I would see with the women that I would work with. It's like we're
Mm-hmm.
getting them 70% better, roughly. They're feeling better physically, but I can see they're hitting a wall, they're hitting a wall, hitting a wall.
Mm-hmm.
And not until we go to the deeper parts are they feeling this real sense of aliveness in the world and finding their
Mm.
voice. And that is what I'm deeply committed to. Like women who
Mm.
really like in their aliveness, finding their voice and like being fully who they are beyond just, okay, now I have the energy to work out. I'm not bloated. I don't have mental fog, right? Like,
Right.
yeah.
So what drew you to that specifically? Like, why wasn't the medicine and just getting them to feel better physically enough for you? Why did you want to go deeper?
I think it is because of my own journey. Um,
Mm-hmm.
like I said, I at 16 I was anorexic. 17 I ended up in the hospital, and yes, like was I was there 8 weeks, 3 weeks inpatient, 5 weeks outpatient. Was I fed and like from a nutrient standpoint and a caloric standpoint? Yes. Was I in a much better position 8 weeks later? But did it help me heal on the inner,
Mm-hmm.
from really healed? No. Like that was a much longer journey. And um and because I know the work that I did within personal development, it is what changed my life. It did give me the courage, like I said, to quit corporate America and go travel. And I mean, now I'm living in Asia, right? I'm living in Bali. Like, it is that gave me the ability to do these things. It wasn't, okay, I went to a series of doctors and now my gut works and my liver function is good and I can be productive. It's like, what is the experience of life? And um, that's that's a big piece of it, because people have said, "Oh wow, look at the life you've lived," and I'm like, "Yeah, but it didn't just come from nothing. It came
Mm-hmm.
from hard work."
Yeah, absolutely. And I asked that for a reason because, as you know, I am a firm believer that, you know, this experience, this feeling that we call purpose, right? Or even fulfillment in the deeper sense of meaning in our lives,
Mm-hmm.
I truly believe that it stems from our struggles,
Yeah, I
right?
agree.
Not our joys, not our passions, not all that, yes, those things are important, but I do not believe that's where things like purpose stem from personally. And, you know, as many people as, I've been honored to connect with in a coaching capacity and beyond, who were willing to share their story and discuss, intimate parts of their life and what they wanted versus where they were, etc. I began to see very clearly parallels that I was also experiencing, which is, um, that it's the very thing that we believe disqualifies us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever the experience, whatever the circumstance, whatever the mistake we made, or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
I find that it's the thing that we often feel disqualifies us from, what we feel led to or called to, like we were talking about that knowing earlier.
Yeah.
That's actually the very thing that makes you highly qualified to do that work. So much so that I think you wouldn't be able to do that work unless you have had those experiences personally. And, as I was dealing with the imposter syndrome of not being licensed and all this kind of stuff, I remember a very specific moment where I was leading my first class here in Los Angeles at the time, and it was my very first one. So there's like this combination of public speaking fear,
Yeah.
right, and the topic in which I'm supposed to be cultivating and holding space for is one that I feel deeply insecure about if I'm capable.
Mm-hmm.
So you combine those two things, and literally on the way to the studio where I was holding the class, and at the time I was working with someone we both know, who it was Reggie. He was
Yeah.
my one-on-one coach, and on my drive to the studio where I'm supposed to host this class, I'm dead serious when I tell you I was deeply, deeply considering getting into a fender bender on purpose. And I say fender bender because I want to like really fuck up my car, but I wanted an excuse that I could be of integrity and say like I got in a car wreck and I can't make it. Because I couldn't just say that, because I know if I just said that and went home, I would probably get in a car wreck and be destroyed. It's like I believe in that shit. So I was like, what if I just do it and like that'll keep me from going? But I ended up obviously going, and I remember I called Reggie because I was in a panic and I didn't think I could do it. And I to this day I'll never remember what he asked me, but
Mm-hmm.
I will forever remember how I responded because it was visceral. Like you said, it was somatic, this experience. And what I said in response to Reggie at the time was, um, you may be able to outsmart me, you meaning anyone in the class that I was afraid of. I said, you may be able to outsmart me, but you'll never be able to outfeel me because I'm never going to talk about something that I haven't actually experienced.
Yeah.
And that was a moment that started to like shift that narrative for me in the beginning. That was the seed. It took years to cultivate, but that was the seed where I was like, oh yeah, you might know the terminology. I might mispronounce something. I might, say something that's really surface level and try to make it sound like it's super deep. I don't know. In the eyes of someone that is an expert on that stuff. But what I know for a fact is if you challenge me on the lesson that I'm attempting to convey, I may figure out how to like say it differently. So maybe it resonates a little better with someone. But if you're trying to challenge me on the root of the lesson, I will stand there strong because I'm speaking about something I've experienced.
Right. Totally.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And, but yeah, it's so funny. And I find that a lot because, I work with coaches specifically and mission driven entrepreneurs. Most of the time it's a coach, a consultant, a service provider of some sort, a healer. And without fail, in the very beginning, they're phenomenal. They have the knowledge, they have the skill, they have this experience, but they're wrapped up in this belief that because they're not insert whatever their thing is, they're not blank enough of something
Right.
that disqualifies them. Just like I felt, just like I know you described, you felt, when in fact that's the secret sauce.
It is totally the secret sauce.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's cultivating the confidence.
Mm.
It's
Oh, I love
cultivating.
that. Cultivating.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
just don't wake up confident, huh?
No. People do,
That's
but I
not, you just don't manifest confidence. Is that not the thing? You got to actually cultivate it. You got to work. Okay. Damn it,
yeah.
Instagram. You had me
Yeah, right.
believe in something else.
Yeah. Totally. 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 And I think we all come at it at different levels, but like for me, it's this constant journey. It's this
Mm.
constant cultivation. And I know the days that I don't sit with it and I don't create it in my physical being, I'm not
Mm-hmm.
I'm not operating or vibrating at the same level by any
Mm.
means. And
Mm.
so yeah, that's why I say it's a cultivation.
I
Um,
love this.
yeah.
So I got a question, and I'm really curious about your thoughts on this. And because you obviously have this deep understanding of medicine, holistic practices, and a much deeper understanding of Western practices than the mass majority of all of us. Maybe even some that hold a license. I don't know, but uh, but I'd be very curious about this idea that I have around the difference because it absolutely blows my mind. By the way, that so many in one position or the other like just completely poo poos the other as if they're completely wrong and shouldn't exist.
Yeah.
Like it baffles my mind. Um, but the question I have is I see a lot of the Western practices, the typical medical solutions, the pills, the surgeries, the
Yeah.
those kind of drastic approaches, um, as being very necessary in an acute situation,
Mm-hmm.
right? Almost like an intervention of sorts. Like they're very, very effective in like an intervention style or type of circumstance.
Yeah.
Whereas the more Eastern, holistic
Mm-hmm.
approaches are far more, and I mean, in my opinion, far more uh, superior to, a living a well-rounded, healthier, sustainable life in alignment with how this thing, I'm pointing at our bodies, right,
Yeah.
connects to and aligns with these things. And what I'm talking about outside is nature,
Nature.
like
Yeah.
the real shit, right? The stuff that's been here long before we were and long after us, I'm certain.
Yeah.
Um, so I'd love to know your thoughts on that, given your depth of understanding of both. Like, how do you see it when someone says that one's wrong or this one's wrong, and they, for whatever reason, they're saying no to one or the other in some sort of like absolute.
Yeah. Well, I'll never forget it. One of the things that I was always stood out for me for medical school is there's
Mm-hmm.
never an always. It's not always one way, ever,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so it's not 100% this way or 100% that way. And it is my belief, and there is always a place like um, for medication, or there is a place for, like you said, in acute situations, we absolutely need Western medicine. Like for me, like you'll never see me in an emergency situation, or like we need that, like hands down. Like there is no replacement for that.
Yeah.
But when, there just isn't.
I'm s- I, I'm sitting there thinking like, oh yeah, because when I have a migraine, like fuck your lemon water. I need you better give me that shit. You better give me the real stuff now.
I mean, if I was, because I remember writing in like the form, like nothing's off limits, and I really
Yeah.
want to lean into that myself, because
Mm.
part of it is I still know I hold back, and I don't want to hold back as much as I do.
Yeah, that's
And
fair.
like when I was in medical school and was going through major anxiety and panic, I did go to a doctor and they did give me Xanax. Now I was exceptionally afraid of it. I went to
Mm-hmm.
two NDs in the same day. One gave me Xanax, one gave me homeopathy. I took them both,
Mm.
but I was very afraid of the Xanax, right? Like I didn't want to
Mm-hmm.
touch it, to be honest. But I was in
Mm-hmm.
such a bad state and I had to take exams. And like, what do I
Mm-hmm.
do? And I'm like, oh, like not functioning like a human person.
Yep.
And I'm grateful. I always passed my test. I got through school. But
Mm-hmm.
like, there is always a time and a place. Now, if you're talking about ongoing anxiety, ongoing chronic illness, ongoing, like you've been through every channel,
Mm-hmm.
nothing's working, right? Like there's something bigger at play. Another
It's deeper.
medication, right? Like another medication added to your list of 10 medications is not going to do it.
Mm-mm.
It's just not going to do it. And,
Mm-mm.
I've had a number of clients over the last year that landed on my doorstep, right, with major
Mm-hmm.
chronic illness, complex disease, and they were on the list of meds. And the
Mm-hmm.
problem is that some of them were okay helping them get by, but some of them were also making things worse, making
Mm-hmm.
it harder for them to heal.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, how do you pull all of that apart once it's been years? Right? It's
Yeah.
really challenging. It's
Yeah.
really challenging.
Well, this is one of the issues that I had as I was beginning to develop relationships inside of uh, kind of the psychology communities,
Hmm.
right? And I would often hear psychologists, obviously a very different approach with their study and area of expertise being, medications and whatnot. Um, but I would hear many of them that I was in conversation with make reference to how they were trained to prescribe, not heal.
Hmm. Yeah.
And to me, again, there's always a need, right? Like it's very necessary for people in moments and in seasons where, they just need that life vest. They're drowning otherwise. And I've been there, as a man who's nearly committed suicide. I get it, right? And you know, but even in sharing that little tidbit there, like the what I found was often it's like the thing that we saw. They're a symptom, right? It's not the source.
Hmm.
So just trying to come at the symptom and ease the symptom might be necessary to get you through the day or through that season. But if you believe or you've bought into this idea that the deeper work is some sort of woo woo, is some sort of like voodoo thing that's not appropriate or whatever, some people can say about this stuff. Um, it baffles me because it makes like it stems from something so much deeper,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Like I heard one of the best definitions I ever heard around the idea of depression. When I say idea, I don't mean to minimize it, but around depression. And this is with respect to those that do have a legit diagnosis of severe depression, right? They do exist, but I think it's far and few between based on how often this is discussed and
Yeah.
people prescribe antidepressants and this kind of stuff. But what the best definition I ever heard was depression is nothing more than denied expression.
Hmm. Yeah.
And with that, I would love to know, given your expertise on understanding both, right?
Just like
What
sent
would
the
you,
whole wave through me.
yeah,
Oh
right?
wow.
And
Yeah.
so how would you, like in your line of work, both in your personal life as well as you supporting others, like how often do you find that, obviously the medical, the physical approach is very necessary, because I think that's also what the world of psychology gets wrong,
Yeah.
right? Is they don't include, or they don't have a counterpart that understands, the hormones and the nutrition and how that affects someone's, mental well-being. Instead, they're just saying like, by the way, this is the most funny thing about psychology. Is like you walk into a psychologist's office, and essentially it's no different than taking your car to a mechanic and saying like, uh, I have a noise coming from the front of the car, and the mechanic's like, I know what that is. Because in a psychologist's office, you're literally leaning on the patient themselves to articulate whatever it is they're experiencing based on the words and the ways in which they describe their circumstance. You're sitting there just being like, oh, I know what that is.
Do that.
Like,
Yeah.
how?
Yeah.
There's no scan of the brain. There's no understanding of the nervous system. There's no, deep dive into, the root cause,
Yeah.
traumas that could have been childhood related, like all these kind of things. Like, to assume that, a 4-minute conversation, a 40-minute conversation, someone could be like, I know what's going on there. You're like,
Yeah.
what? Are you a coach who has been struggling to do everything yourself? I mean, all of the content, the emails, the marketing, not to mention every time you open your phone, there's a new social media strategy that someone is pitching that just makes you feel like you'll never be able to keep up. When all you really care about is helping people in a meaningful way while building the kind of coaching business your family can depend on. I'm Matthew Paetz, the founder of Momentum, a growth agency that specializes in helping coaches just like you break through your first 100K. If you're a coach who is tired of trying to figure it all out themselves and you just want to build a business that works, then I'm going to encourage you to click the link in our show notes to take your 100K coaching assessment to find out if you're ready to unlock your 6-figure potential today.
Yeah.
No, you don't.
Right. And
Right?
it is so complex because there is the biochemistry of it all, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there are tests to do to look at, are you able, what's called, to methylate? And if you're not able to methylate, you're going to have, and you're put on a medication that then drives the processes. Like that's why some people are put on SSRIs and they're made worse. It's because biochemically they're not processing. Keep it really simple, they're not processing
Yeah.
the medication in a way that's actually beneficial. It's actually harming them, right?
Okay.
So there's labs, there are ways of looking, and they're not looked at. So then
Mm-hmm.
there is the biochemical piece. Yeah, then maybe there's copper toxicity, right? Which is going to drive mental illness, right? It's a metal, and it's like you have high levels of metals, you're going to be like, right? If you think of metal pipes, like in electricity, right? Like you're going to be
Oh.
operating at a heightened level, right? On a very basic level.
I never, yeah, that's never been, that analogy's never been made. That's amazing.
Yeah. So there is the biochemical piece, but then there is
Mm.
the what's really what led you there, and what is underneath it. Like for me, again, from a personal level, I was put on medication at 16. I'm
Mm-hmm.
42. I have not been
Mm-hmm.
able to successfully get off the medication, and it is a thing
Mm.
that drives me bonkers. And I have some people that say, well, if you are good on it, then why do you even care? Just keep taking it.
Mm-hmm.
Because like you said, it's like the lack of expression. It wasn't coming. Do I think maybe something biochemically? Yeah, my gut was always off as a child. But why was my gut always off? Because I couldn't express myself.
Mm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like if I was in a dynamic where I felt safe to express myself, would my gut been such a mess that would have maybe not have impacted me, or mentally, emotionally, or the whole dynamic, right?
Right.
So like you said, to go through, someone sits down for 40 minutes, you don't look at blood work, you don't know what's going on the level of your minerals, your nutrients, your hormones, your basic chemistry, blood chemistry, and to say, okay, I'm going to pick this one. It's
Right.
very surface level, and then you don't know how that medication is going to impact a person.
Right. It's so funny how we'll disregard the importance of nutrition when it comes to how our body functions, right? In many conversations in many circles, but yet it's very obvious to us that if we put shitty gas in our cars for a long time, it's just going to ruin the motor.
Right.
It's like, okay, hold on.
Right. Totally.
Like,
It's like
make this make sense.
you don't put, what is it? I don't even know the type of gasoline anymore. Regular and a Ferrari, right? Like,
Yeah. Right.
like,
Regular. I love that. Regular and Ferrari. I'm with it.
just don't do that.
Yeah. Right.
So,
And by the way, if anyone that understands a Ferrari or has ever driven one or owns one, they know you would not they would freak the fuck out if you put regular gas in that car. Right. So putting, regular gas inside of this Ferrari, this body is, that could, that is designed to perform at a very high level, is the same thing. And by the way, this is coming from a guy that still has a diet like a 12-year-old. That's where
we're still there, huh?
I'll talk daddy issues all day long. I'll give you my deepest and darkest secrets, and like I don't give a shit where we are. But if you like, my challenge has been, and I've gotten much better, but my challenge is diet. Like, very salty stuff I'm drawn to. I've never really been interested in sugars. It's not been my vice, but salt definitely is. But looking back, I also recognize that so much of my dietary choices they stem from childhood, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But the connection to that is that's home.
It's emotional.
Right? So when I'm sitting down and I'm crushing pizza and everyone's making fun of me about it, to me, I'm like, yeah, I get it. But like underneath subconsciously, and it took me a long time to connect these dots, I'm like, oh, every time I eat these types of foods, I'm getting a sense of comfort. I'm getting a sense of home because this is what I used to eat growing up.
Yeah, totally.
Right? So eating a salad, although I feel fucking better, I feel lonely. Right?
Yeah.
Versus this pizza feels like I'm getting a hug from a familiar friend. Right? Mostly because I can't move afterwards.
I'm just gonna stay on the
couch. Right? I'm being cuddled real tight by this.
So funny.
But yeah, I think it's it's so important to understand, like, what are the emotional connections that we have to these things, and until we do, call it impossible to change. This being the beginning of the year for many, there's a lot of conversations around resolutions, and why do people either not reach their goals, because that's what a resolution is, right? It's just a goal.
Yeah.
They either don't reach it or they do, and then they quickly fall off. It's unsustainable for them. It has nothing to do with the willpower or the want or anything, in my opinion. No. I believe it has everything to do with the identity. Yeah. Right? Who do they believe themselves to be? And until you understand that, most of our goals that we have in life, they live outside of our current identities. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And they live in our nervous system. Mm-hmm. Right? And that's partly why why I segued into the direction that I've gone in the realm of the somatics and the Tantra and the Taoism methodologies. Because it's been, there's like somatic experiencing, and then I also I wasn't going to go to school for another 3 years. I was just like, not about that. Not doing it.
Yeah, I've hit my quota.
Yeah, I know, I just can't. But I found this other path, and because it's in the nervous system, like there's the identity outside, but it's also, why is that identity so far away from me? Like I can't even feel it or connect to it other than connecting to fear. Yep. And like one of the interesting things that I got from my teacher is like, there's always like this spiritual, like go up and out. You want to go up and out, but it's like where the deep knowing is from down, going down and in. It's not going up and out, right? It's like down and in, and finding the anchor within yourself.
Yep. It's I like to I use the metaphor of a tree often around this conversation because, you know, in our society today, everything is on such display, right?
Yeah.
So much of our efforts are intentional or otherwise are committed to the appearances of things.
Yeah.
Right. So using the metaphor of a tree, it's like we're spending so much of our time focused on how big our branches are, how big our leaves are getting in the world. Right. And very little, if any, time focused on the depth and the strength of the roots beneath the ground.
Yeah.
Right. But again, I think we are parallel to nature because we are nature. So using a tree, I think it works. It's a perfect example because just like in life, when something, you know, a tragedy hits or, you know, a business goes under or a relationship ends or one of these big, really significant changes, I don't care how, you
Yeah.
know, aligned and attuned one is, these experiences are going to be traumatic. Right. But the difference is how one can respond, how one withstands those experiences and the ability to not make it worse. I
Yes.
used to make shit worse
Oh
all
my,
the time.
all the time.
Right. And I could justify it. Right. I justified all the drug use. I justified the promiscuous behavior. I justified, you know, the alcohol and the anger and all those things. Like I'd be like, of course I'm this way. Look at what, you know, look at all that I've experienced and the things that it's justifiable. Cool. Still not okay.
Yeah.
Right. Still not cute. So, um, but that idea of like, you know, when the wind blows a tree that has big leaves, big branches and little roots, it's going to blow over.
Yeah. So
Right.
there's that.
Versus how important would it be to, like you say, go in.
Mhm.
And I know some people might struggle with understanding what we mean. Other people know exactly what we're talking about. Right. But to go in and identify, like, okay, I'm going to commit to the identity of creating strong roots,
Mhm.
becoming
Yeah.
someone who insert whatever it is versus I must achieve that so that I can be that.
Right. 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 Yeah.
Right. Very different.
Yeah.
Not
Very.
sustainable.
No, not sustainable at all. At all.
Yeah. I
And
love
it's
it. I love it.
take,
So
yeah. Hmm.
no, I was going to ask because one thing that I find, because you know, there's a lot. We all find different teachers, different, you know, modalities that really speak to us. And you know, you've mentioned the nervous system several times, and it's something that you know, I too, when I found, you know, the line of training that I discovered that really worked for me, um, it opened up so many doors. Right, there was no turning back at that point. But I would, eh, instead of just like introducing mine right off the bat, I would love to know, like, you know, what was the line of work or whose work have you found that you really resonated with that maybe someone that doesn't have, you know, the training or the understanding of medical and all that kind of big, you
Yeah.
know, the big words kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Whose work have you found to that helped you better understand how to apply that knowledge to your actual life?
Yes. So, um, so this past year, it's really a year and a half, I was in studying with Layla Martin in her program. I don't know if you know who Layla Martin is. It's
Mm-mm.
called Vita Coaching, and she's incredible.
Mm.
She actually lived in Asia for 10 years studying Tantra and all of this, um, and Taoist philosophies, and that's where um, she really gained and learned her mastery, right? And for
Mm.
me, what drew me there is I've been on this medication for many, many years. Now, the
Mm-hmm.
world and the people that I circulate in are people that are on medicine journeys all the time. Ayahuasca,
Mm.
MDMA, ketamine, whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not talking party, I'm talking like ceremonial, like
Yeah.
therapeutic, right? You know what
My
I'm talking
last conversation was with a psychedelic facilitator.
about. Right. So,
So I'm gonna sit here cheesing right now because I'm like,
yeah,
let's go.
yeah. And so I said, well, I can't use those tools, at least right now, currently, because I'm on this medication. I have had a horrendous time
Oh,
getting off of
interesting.
it. I've had a horrendous, like, you were there by my
Mm-hmm.
side in Miami when I was dealing with the fallout
Mm-hmm.
6 months later of coming off the medication and what that looked like. That was a time of, okay, get back on the medication so I can, like, put myself back together because I was a giant disaster. And thank you for being there for me because that was rough. But
Thank you for the trust.
yeah, but I said I can't go and do these plant medicine journeys. And like you guys, I lived in California, in Arizona, in Tulum. I'm in Bali. Like the world I live in are surrounded by plant medicine, right? In one way.
Right.
And I said, well, I've got to be able to get there another way. And so that's where the whole Tantra sex get to use sex, use that as a gateway to higher
And
connection.
on that, because you bring up sex, which obviously it can be a taboo, uncomfortable conversation for many, but I'm very curious because, again, I mean, some of my story, my story stems from sexual abuse as a child, from a male more specifically. So I battled a lot of fears and struggles with sexuality as an adult. Made many decisions that in the moment didn't feel aligned, and it left me battling a lot of shame and struggle, and then found cocaine, and I was a prostitute for a while. Like my resume is shining, right? So that's when people are like, why do you like, what makes you qualified to do the work you do? I'm like, oh, let me show you. Right. You see all these bridges that have been burned.
Right.
Yeah, that's what makes me qualified. But I specifically am very interested in your thoughts on the sexuality piece, or not just sexuality, but the actual finding sex as a how do I want to put this, like, not necessarily as a tool, because I don't want to make it sound like just going out and sleeping around is the thing, because by the way, I've done it and that didn't feel like healing.
Right.
So when you talk about sex in that way, now, especially as a woman, like, how would you describe what you mean by that for someone that is like, wait, what?
Yeah, and that's a great question, because for me, and I know especially Tantra has its whole like taboo, right? And I'm not talking about temple nights, which is, you're going and you're having, I don't want to call it, well, there's elements that could look like an orgy. It could look like all this. I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about is actually self intimacy and using your own sexual self intimacy and it's breath work and it's meditation and it's energy work and it's using these tools to then release shame is one, but it's getting into the nervous system. It's rewiring the nervous system. It's rewiring the neural pathways in your brain. And it's allowing your body to finally like express what hasn't been expressed. So it's using sex as a first personal, intimate self-pleasure as a portal. And then, if it's like can be expanded into a partnership or whatnot. Now, if your jam is polyamory or any of that stuff, go for it. But it's using sex very intentionally and starting with self, because
please continue.
I recently shared like a reel on Instagram about a client who I one time suggested that she does breast massage, right? And she was like, no, right? And she's a mother of two, and just the idea of touching herself, and then and connecting like on a very basic level. I'm not saying doing anything crazy, at least in my mind. And then she comes back as saying, I had my mammo, I had my yearly, and now I have, benign cyst in my breast. And I'm like, well, you think about, there's so much disconnection. There's so much, she was like repelling her own body. And then something comes up from a physical standpoint. Like, of course they're connected.
Yep. I couldn't agree more. And so I'm curious, how would you say one could experience sex? Because I think sex is one of the areas in most of our lives where we carry a lot of wounds, right?
So much.
Whether someone was abused as a child, whether someone was taken advantage of, whether someone feels that that's their only worth is if they, give themselves over to others. I mean, for fuck's sake, I literally have tattooed on my chest "lust or love," right? Quite literally, like across the chest,
Oh wow.
right? And at the time that I got it, the conversation in my mind was that, and I still believe this, that neither lust or love could survive on its own,
Mm,
right? And in relation to being in partnership with someone,
yeah.
right? But if they were together, right? If those two things coexisted in the relationship, it could survive for eternity, right? That was my philosophy behind it. But
Yeah.
later, in plant medicine journeys, what I came to also learn was that it was a subconscious fuck you to those who I was sleeping with. Because again, my relationship to sex was this was the only, I believed at a very young age that physical experiences were my purpose on this planet was to be a physical experience for others, right? Because again, my sexual abuse started at 5, right? So this is what I'm learning. And so this being tattooed on my chest was subconsciously a very candid question for anyone who I was in a physical, experience with, to ask themselves, what was I to them? Am I just love, or am I just lust, or do you actually love me? Right.
Yeah.
And so all of this to ask, like, how could one who hasn't done a lot of the self-discovery, who hasn't, maybe like the client you're kind of describing, where there's still so much shame around their own body, not even what they experiencing with someone, present, but like in their own time,
Yeah.
right? Like, how would you say one can begin to shift to better understand what you're referring to and being able to use their sexual energy, their sexual essence, not just go sleep around with a bunch of people?
Right. Yeah. Um, I think first it's even noticing, because noticing the energy in your body, right? Like there is, or just noticing your body.
Mm-hmm.
Like it can be so subtle because yes, some people are super connected energetically, right?
Mm-hmm.
Others are not. And it's, if you're not, then even feeling slight sensation, like maybe you do know the sensation of orgasm, but maybe you don't.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, how many women have never even experienced an orgasm in reality?
Mm-hmm.
Many, many,
And by the way, for every man listening, a lot of them.
many,
So put your ego down.
many. like,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
women can fake orgasms. Like it's a real,
Mm-hmm.
it's real, it's true, and many women don't experience it, and because there's not a safety or many.
Yes. Can I pause on this for a second? Because something just came to me that I think would be very important, I think specifically for men to hear,
Yeah.
right? And so the idea of faking an orgasm is often a joke, made to be a
Yes.
joke, this
Yeah.
thing, whatever, right? It's the minimum. But let me ask you as a woman, what is the reason a woman might fake an orgasm when she's with a partner? If you're being candid,
Yeah.
whatever that means, because obviously I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it could be a few different things. You could
Mm-hmm.
not be enjoying it and you want it to just end the
Mm-hmm.
experience. Like, okay, I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
I'm good. We can stop now.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
Or it could be you want to make or have the man feel like, okay, they've accomplished their goal. Right. So
Mm-hmm.
it's
Their goal.
their goal, right? So it could be for the
Mm-hmm.
man, or it could be for, or it could be, I don't even know how. I've never had it. Like I said, never had an orgasm in my life, so I've got to just kind of act as if and complete the experience.
Because that's what we're supposed to do.
Right.
So, with that being said, and that's exactly why I was asking for, and I'm not asking for your personal experiences, but more so of your understanding how trauma works in the nervous
Yes.
system, and somatic experiences, etc.
Mhm.
Like a lot of people have an idea that trauma means, in using a sexual reference, like they must have been raped or abused or something to that extreme. Obviously, very traumatic,
Right.
right? But how traumatic
Mhm.
is it for women to be in such an intimate
Mhm. Space.
situation with someone, with a man, and feel as if they have to fake this moment, either so they can make it stop
Mhm.
because they're not enjoying it, which when it's that intimate and you're not enjoying it, by the way, it probably feels a lot like rape,
Mhm.
even if it was consensual to the body. And I'm talking about to the body,
The body. Yeah.
right? And I know that's a very big
Mhm.
claim,
Big statement.
right? That sentence in and of itself, it can be. It's
Mhm.
not all the time, but can.
Yeah.
Or that they're doing it to perform, because if they don't, if the guy doesn't reach his goal, then what does that mean about her? Or what will she have to endure
Yeah.
in his response,
Yeah.
right? And his shame and his embarrassment and his whatever he may feel because
Yeah.
a man has never been with a woman who's never orgasmed.
Right. Right. Right.
Says every guy that's been with women who couldn't orgasm.
Yeah.
So, but I could keep going with this, but as a woman, how much of what I'm saying
Yeah.
is even remotely close to
Yeah.
accurate?
I think there's a lot of shame that a woman can feel because it is typically very performative. The whole experience
Mm-hmm.
is very performative. It's about
Mm-hmm.
getting to that place. It's about getting to the orgasm. It's about right
Mm-hmm.
and and if a woman doesn't show up in that, there is a letdown, or there can feel like shame. And again, you don't know how the man is going to respond until you get to know them, if you even have the chance to, right? If it's not
Mm-hmm.
just like a
Mm-hmm.
one-off, whatever, we're having a good time,
Right.
right? But
Right.
if there isn't even the opportunity, and so it can carry a lot of shame.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be then shame for I've never had an orgasm, I don't even know what it feels like, I don't even know what to do, and then on top of it, what's going to come back at me.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of this being like an experience of pleasure and building and connection and energy,
Mm-hmm.
and it becomes this whole dance of playing off each other's shame potentially.
Yeah. 100%. Right. I said it when Allison and I first started dating. Like the people fell in love, the souls fell in love, and then the patterns began to date.
Yeah.
Right? The patterns of shame and protection and
Yeah. Yeah.
doubt and fear and all these kind of things, and naturally they don't play well together.
Yeah.
Right. So I experienced a lot of that, and I just think it's so important too that men start to drop their ego in this conversation, because and it's not about just having a healthy sex life, which, by the way, biologically speaking, the importance of that for your health is
Yeah.
paramount, right, in many ways.
Yeah.
um, but I think to begin removing some of the mystery around this, right, and a lot of the performance equaling masculinity. And by performance, I how big and strong and long they last, and
Oh
you
my God.
know the shit that I've heard before. It's wild. And by the way, men, straight up, don't fucking take your advice from men in the locker room. Like, what are you doing? And by the locker room, I mean that literally and metaphorically. Like, you're going to go to another man to talk about how to please a woman.
Yeah.
Like, no, 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 no,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
Why don't we go to the source and drop our guard and drop our ego and become curious and genuinely just listen to
Mhm.
what may or may not be appropriate for each individual,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
because each person might need or feel safe or drawn to something very different,
Yeah.
right? And that's okay.
Yeah.
Matter
Yeah.
of fact, that's how this shit works. So better than it's okay, start being okay with it.
For sure.
Like,
Sure.
and and again, this is just, it goes back to the idea of the shame on both parts, right? The woman in this case, as we've described, and feeling as if she must perform in a certain way or else.
Yeah.
The sentence you use, so the man can feel like he reached his goal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
And it's not to say his goal isn't important,
Right.
but if that's why we are both there for
Okay.
his goal, that might not be a healthy experience,
Yeah.
whether one is aware or not.
Mm-hmm.
For both parties.
Yeah.
Not just the woman, but for both parties.
For sure.
So.
Yeah, and the trickle down effect is real, and I say that in the sense of the health piece of it, right? Whether it's the health, how vital a man is, how vital a woman is, right? After these types of experiences, and if I was to go back to like the self, why is it so important in self? Like to use this sexual, if you want to say sexual methodologies or these tantric methodologies, it's because finding safety within yourself is so important. And it's just
so important.
Yeah. And when somebody can feel safe sexually within themselves, then it changes how do you connect with somebody, how do you connect with a man, how do you connect with a woman, how do you connect with a partner.
Yeah. And I think it's so important. I find this, in life in general, right? We're hardwired to perform for our needs as children, right? Because we're completely dependent creatures.
Yeah.
So we must learn we must observe and understand what is expected of us to be accepted or approved of by our tribe, so that our tribe will protect us and feed us and care for us, right? Because if we don't do what's approved, the chances of rejection are much higher. And if we're rejected in the wild, we die alone, yada, yada. Right.
Right.
So we are all hardwired to, in the very early stages, which happen to be the stages where we're most susceptible and we're learning patterns of survival and things that become our identity in the future, et cetera. But we all are learning how to perform so that others will accept and approve of us. Yeah. And when people, as I'm listening to you describe, the sexual experiences that many women have, and I'm sure men as well, but many women have for sure, of the performance, right? Like we were talking about the man, making sure the man feels like he reaches his goal, or, this is what you think you're supposed to do in these experiences with men. You're supposed to make these sounds, you're supposed to make these reactions, or whatever it looks like, right? But again, what I hear is really heartbreaking, because it sounds like there's a lot of not performing just for the man, but also maybe, especially because you're talking about shame when they're by themselves, right?
Yeah.
That there's such a lack of understanding of who they are, their desires, what makes them feel good, what makes them feel comfortable and safe, because the strategies have been for so long programmed that you are supposed to perform in order to receive this love, this connection, this loyalty, by the way, is another thing that we could go into. If your relationship is dependent on sex, you're not in a relationship, you're in a transaction.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So let's be very clear about that.
Yeah.
But it takes a lot of courage and a lot of on both parts to say, like, you know what, maybe we're not on the same page in that area right now, but you're my person. Right. And that matters. It's going back. It's the roots, not the leaves.
Yeah. 100%. 100%.
Yeah. First off, I did not know we were going there with this conversation today. So you said nothing off limits in the notes. So I said, okay.
Let's go.
Right.
This is what's happened over the last 2 years.
Yeah, exactly. Welcome to us just catching up. You guys, thank you for listening.
So fun.
No, I really, really appreciate, and I would love to continue this conversation, because I think, given the work that I've done, and especially because of my experience around sex and sexuality, and my level of comfort that I've come to earn, quite frankly, but being a man that identifies as a heterosexual man, but has lived a very bisexual, life for a few years. And the shame, I mean, me being able to say that right now, right? And we're like, oh my God, who's going to hear? My cousin's going to hear, my friend's going to hear. give a fuck anymore, right? Because it's the truth. So, but the truth is, I believe more conversations like this, no matter how messy, no matter how many things I may have said or you may have said that looking back, we'd be like, fuck, I wish I'd have said that differently. Right. Or like, that's not what I meant. They're going to judge that. True, they might. And maybe they should judge some of the things that I said, or maybe some of the things that were said here. But it's too important to not have these conversations, even if they're going to be messy, because they need to be had.
Yep. Yeah. Right. Yeah. 100%. And it's funny because I find myself with trying to explain what I'm doing now. It's like I still don't know how to express it. But in a conversation like this, it's like, all right, let's talk. Like I got it.
Right. Try to explain this at Christmas dinner, and Grandma's just going to be like, "So you're just fucking everybody? Is that what you're doing?"
Yeah.
You're like, "Not without consent, Grandma." Yeah, Grandma, you got 13 children. Maybe you should,
Right. Let's have a conversation about that. But yeah,
right.
Like in the world or online on Instagram or website, I'm like, how do I even encompass this? Because it's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's so important. It's that like self-intimacy, ultimately self-intimacy, self-love. And
right.
And then I feel like that's the root of health, of true health, true connection, attunement, all of those things.
And this is why I call this more than a business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? Because this is just what you happen to do for a living for hundreds and thousands of women all over the world. But this conversation is what you're really doing, right? Yeah. For any and all whoever, are fortunate enough to come in contact with you and your work and what you're doing in the world. So grateful. And, on that note, I want to be mindful of our time today. But on that note, I would love to hear, know, your words, your world. Like, what is it that you're doing? Who is it that you would like to send the bat signal to if they're looking for someone like you? What is it that you do? Who do you support? And where the hell can they find it so that we can put a link to it?
Yeah. So, I'm working basically with women in this realm, with combining the hormonal, it's really women's health with this deeper work of like self-intimacy, self-love, finding your aliveness. And it's for the women that, you've worked really hard and you're continuing to work really hard and you've done amazing things in the world, but there's a disconnect. You don't feel well, whether it's physically you don't feel well or like mentally, emotionally, spiritually, sexually, you don't feel well. And it's like something's got to give. So, what I've come to say is, that women can reclaim their health, radiant self-love, and deep aliveness. And that's really, in a nutshell, what it is.
The good stuff.
Yeah, the good stuff. And where can
the real stuff.
Yeah, the real stuff. And where can you find me? Yes, I live in Bali, but you can find me on Instagram. I have actually just put together a new website, and drevayacobi.com. And yeah,
I love it. Well, we'll obviously link this, share it with the world. I can't wait to hear everyone who hears it give me shit. But good.
I can't say when I started medical school, or even when I finished, that I would be talking about sex and sexuality and all this stuff. But here we are. Let's go.
But that's why so many more need to do it, right? Because I think it's the avoidance of something so foundational, so fundamental, that has, slowly spiraled out of control. And now so many, it's not that it's the one thing that's the reason for all things, but it is certainly a big, big, big issue in so many people's lives. And, not feeling like it's okay to talk about or, feel, you get it. I mean, it's
having a safe space.
No more. Yeah. Absolutely. And that's what I know for a fact you provide, for both women and men, but especially for women. So thank you. Seriously, thank you for the work that you do.
Yes.
Right. So And I'm sorry for all the male egos that got offended. Actually, I'm not. I'm not sorry about that at all,
I have had
actually.
women. I have had women come to me and be like, "Can you teach our husbands, please?" And I'm like, "I'd rather
But they should. Again, men should go to women to learn about this shit. Right? Stop going to your best friend who actually doesn't fucking know.
He's
Right?
guessing too, right? Totally.
Yeah. Like, I don't care how much Pornhub you've watched. You don't get it.
No, 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 no.
Right? Like, come on. That's a whole nother topic. But anyway.
Anyway,
So,
well,
all right,
amazing
you. Well, I
conversation
appreciate you.
as always.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Likewise. And I'm finding this sundown glow to be quite dramatic at the moment.
Yeah, it just got dark.
Yeah, we're on the other side of the world.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
So, well, until next time, and I hope that comes much, much sooner than
Yes.
this one did compared to our last conversation. But until next time, I hope you're doing very, very, very well. You're clearly doing what you're meant to do, and I couldn't be happier for you.
Thank you.